Welcome back, audience. Hope you're doing good. As always, cheers. Okay. Well, yesterday I talked about the free will and how to not to infringe other people's free will by, um, imagining them and forcing them to play a specific role rather than just creating the role and letting them to fit that role voluntarily in the way they want to fit, right? So that's I use the metaphor. It's not really a metaphor. I mean, this is how it's supposed to be in the movies anyway, of the relationship of the director and the actor. Okay, so I hope that is clear. How not to go dark in the magic. Okay, in the magic, you shouldn't use force. The only place where the force may be necessary is in the might. I can guarantee you this. In the magic, you do never use force. You use a certain type of a being level intent, as Thomas Campbell say. But it's not force. Okay? Now, you may also ask the question, what about the evil? What about the ego? Does ego have free will? And the answer, of course, is no. The ego is already something that has broken the law of the free will. That's why it is evil. That's why it is ego. And like I said, there are degrees of evil, but to me, any kind of action from that point of suffering for the hedonistic relief or the pleasure to me is evil. And like I said, there's a low degree of evil and a high degree of evil. Okay, so I want to talk about this a little more and use specific life examples of how evil may sneak in somebody's life due to exact reason of parents or guardians not saying no to the ego's tantrum. Okay? Okay, so now I want to talk about the specific, um, when somebody already broken the law of the free will, and all evil are doing that. They're breaking the law of the free will. Okay? Now, this simulation allows anybody to break that free will, that one of those laws. Okay? Those principles. But the point of this simulation is that you break it, you get a feedback, and you self correct. And you self correct on these primordial principles and say, oh, these should never be broken. If I want to have a good life, I should not break these principles. I should not be breaking these principles. And you stop breaking these principles only through the alchemy when there's actual change in your heart of who you are. This is how, like I said, you gain that individuality. That's why it permits a deviation from those laws. Okay? The problem is when there is no self-correction. When there's a deviation from that law, no feedback, and there is some sort of reward, and then there is a continuation towards this like dark way of living life. Okay, and in a way it's sort of like a getting away from the fact of what you're here to do, because we start life as a nightmare, and the point of life is to that tree of knowledge, which is a nightmare, is to take that nightmare and transform it into the dream. That's what we're here to do. We are here to take that nightmare, basically go all the way from branches to the root and eliminate that and plant the tree of life where the tree of knowledge was there, right? And so then that's what we're here to do. Now, you can avoid that. You can not face the fact that you are in a nightmare and you need to find a way of how to turn it into a dream by running away from the fact and sugarcoating it. And that is the hedonistic pleasure seeking type of behaviors, vanity seeking stuff, right? And it is running away from life. And that's everything that goes in that direction is evil. If you go way too far, then super evil. If you're just chasing like a little vanity and whatnot, it's a little evil, but it's still evil. The reason I say that little evil and a big evil is because for if you're listening, to understand that the evil can get away from the little one. If you don't stop the little one, it grows into the big one. Okay. Now, I want to use real life examples, and I want to talk about the ego tantrums that we all see sometimes happening in a child. Okay, in a child, and now even in adults. So I saw this video recently that it seemed like there was a woman in her late 20s got arrested because she had a complete meltdown and literally like an adult ego tantrum, and she had to be arrested and put to jail, right? Hopefully not prison, but anyway, the point of it all, that if you look at that video, you'll see that, okay, there's an adult woman having a complete tantrum. Why is there a tantrum in an adult woman? There's a lot of women like that out there, men too, who never actually been dealt with and said no to that ego will, right? This is where I'm being very clear right now. You don't let the ego to get away of what it wants. Ego has no free will, has no right. Okay? And in a child, I've dealt with some of the children, and I've helped some of the parents to deal with the children who are having these ego tantrums because they were too weak and they were letting the child get away with their ego tantrums because they were too weak to just hold the space, let that demonic entity to gas out and surrender, right? Screeching, screaming, whatever it takes, you just hold the space and alchemize any kind of feeling so you remain as calm as possible into that storm of that demonic entities trying to enter a child. Like, you can look at it that way. That ego tantrum is trying to get its way through the tantrum, and you should never allow a child to get anything through the ego tantrum, because that's exactly what you'll get in adulthood. And this is like, if it keeps unchecked, even the things like the situations that the person may look like, if you don't keep that in check and you don't exercise that demon at the early age, it comes out as all sorts of dysfunctional things, sexual liberations and shit like that, like OnlyFans, like promiscuity. All of these different things are there, and you can see this is the pattern of a person who's, you can say, demonically possessed, or if you don't like to say that, then the ego has never been dealt with there, and so it's looking for its ways to get pacified through tantrums. So this is why the whole OnlyFans is a tantrum. The whole promiscuity is a tantrum. I'm just using this particular example that woman seemed to be a sex work. It's a tantrum. They've never been dealt with. But if you deal with it early and you don't let the child to get away with his ego, what happens is that you got to be patient, first of all, and you got to take some time. It may take few hours. Doesn't matter how long it takes, but you got to be stronger than that demon. Eventually, the child is gassing out, and the demon surrenders because he did not get that what he wanted through the tantrum. And the child then returning to their authenticity and innocence may come up to the parent, just wanting for a hug, right? And then whatever they want there from their authenticity, from their innocence, they deserve to get, but they do not deserve to get anything from the tantrum. That's the strongest no that you have to say, and you have to say that no with peace, because when a child or adult, it doesn't matter, when you say no to anybody who's protesting against, because you don't let them get away with bullshit, or through the ego, you trigger them, and so they're great. Okay, fine, poof, there's the fire right there. Are you going to be comfortable to stay in the fire? This is a masculine thing. This is why this is often is missing in parenting in men. And you see what I'm trying to say? A man's supposed to be strong enough not to get triggered themselves, alchemize all of that fire until, if you remain calm and you keep alchemizing that fire, the child, the better you are at this, the faster the child is going to calm down and surrender. Because there has to be that surrender in the child, the ego surrender. This is like what the alchemy is all about anyway. And if that happens, the suffering in the child is gone, right? That particular suffering is gone. They surrendered and they came to the parent and they got what they wanted through love, not through some sort of hate and whatnot, right? So that's how you object to the will of the ego in a healthy way. When I was growing up, I mean, the way the tantrums were dealt with was with belts and shit. But that's not good either, because then it builds up resentment and it's not really dealt with. But the real father would deal with this by staying present, holding space, not allowing you to get away with bullshit. If it's necessary to control you physically, would control you physically and immobilize you. This is what happens sometimes in dogs, right? Like, I think that was, what's his name? Cesar Milan, right? Like, look how he coaches dogs. When the dogs are having these types of tantrums, right? He pins them to the ground and just holds space there until the dog surrenders that particular intent that came from anger. Okay, that's how it is the exact same thing. Of course, with a little bit more complexity, is with any kind of person who is coming across from the ego tantrum. That surrender must be there. And realization is that, like, oh shit, like, I just lost my cool. What I wanted, I can have it, but not through my tantrum. I'm going to get whatever I want in my life through, the right way. Because I wouldn't want to pacify my ego anyway, because then I would keep that suffering there that needs some pacification. I'm going to be an addict about something in life and whatever, right? So there's an appreciation for the good parent like that. And it is a type of exorcism. This is why I think fathers, like these days, supposed to be freaking trained exorcist. An exorcism may sound like you may watch a movie and it's like, all of that. In real life, I mean, it may get real bad, but like dealing with the child's tantrum when they are throwing a tantrum, in public and whatnot, and and trying to play with your embarrassment cords and stuff like that, right? You got to be strong enough to deal with that. And I can guarantee you that type of tantrum does gas out. They do give up. It may take hours sometimes, but you got to be strong enough because if you invest those 4 hours of alchemizing that fire that the child is going through, not letting him, again, I'm just repeating myself, because there's two approach to deal with any kind of demonic entity. One is you block their will. That's might. And two is you deal with it internally. You got to alchemize that. You're going to burn it in your heart. Because if it's your child, or not even your child, anybody child, if you are participating in this process and you're holding space and you're not letting the child go away with their tantrum, you will feel that thing inside of you. And may take you even over, and you may get angry and stuff like that, right? But you got to stay there in that fire, burn it all up. And if you can do that, you dealt with it permanently. The child may be free from that thing. Okay? This is very practical way of approaching life right now. I mean, now you have to deal with bigger issues, like if there's never been dealt with before and somebody becomes a politician. You see what I'm trying to say? When you have to make a right choice there, the choice may be made out of tantrum and not as like intelligent decision. See what I'm trying to say? And we end up having in this society, basically, look, like, people may talk about like this demonic possession, that. It's not something scary to be afraid of, or they're like, oh, no, this is nothing. This is just a childhood tantrum. It's just immaturity. And that immaturity may go really heavy, right? Um, and commit evil acts. You see, but there's still immaturity. And this is how you make a nightmare into a dream. At least from my perspective, so demon slaying is the way to do. Because if you take care of that, if in your vicinity, in your domain, those primordial principles are not broken, everything's going to be all right. People are going to make mistakes. They're going to self-correct. Other people are going to help them to self-correct, because everybody knows what we're all about. Nobody judges for somebody just making a mistake or breaking that principle once. That's why I'm adding that this is, like, for example, if there is a feedback that the child, for example, can learn immediately, like, for example, okay, I want to get that cup, and you say like, no, you can't get that cup, right? I say, nah, I want to get that cup, and they having the ego tantrum. If taking that cup creates immediate feedback for them, under controlled circumstances, you can allow them to experiment of what it's like to take that hot cup, right? And so that's the right type of parenting. And you let the child take the, safely take the cup, so they don't burn themselves like the whole body, but they would need to burn their fingers at least to realize what happens if you take that cup. So you allow it, they try it, they burn their fingers, like, oh, okay. So now they got the feedback that was immediate. Other things, for example, may not have the immediate feedback, so it may be a little bit more difficult, right, to parent the child. But for example, drugs, for example, right? If somebody wants to experiment with drugs, you can say, right, you can say like, well, don't take any drugs. I'm not going to let you take any drugs, because that's not an experience of life. It's not, but you can explain a child or a teenager of what that is, what's it gonna do to you. If there's any kind of benefit and there's any kind of downside, you can explain to them, right? But you don't prevent them from taking. So this way, like, you can be like under controlled circumstances, but it's like if somebody wants to see what it's like smoking weed. Of course, they would smoke weed. They would feel like a lot of this pressure lifted off, and think that, wow, that's amazing. It helps me to lift the pressure off and feel great. So what's the downside, right? The downside is if you never face your feelings and you rely on weed, then it's not really what's going to happen. Eventually you're going to need more and more of that weed, and the addiction will develop. Then when you don't get weed any at that moment, you get really angry for no reason, stuff like that, and then that can sabotage your life, right? So there's your feedback. But it took a little while for the person to see that, oh shit, I can fuck up my life if I smoke like that. But you say, okay, there is a value there, but I cannot smoke if I feel bad to fix anything, right? But if there is a celebration and friends are hanging out, smoking weed just that a little bit as a social lubricant works amazing, right? Not overdo it until, like, you don't do it to fix anything, you do it as a celebration. And so it has its role, right? That's at least my view. But I know that you could go, you know, down that wrong path if you never face your feelings. But if a person does not have these already, right, then everything's sort of alchemized, then these are just like a flavors of life. Somebody will say, like, well, why do you need to smoke? You see, that's the thing. I don't need to smoke. It's for example, like, why do you want to like this particular flavor of ice cream? It's the flavor of experience. It's because, like, when I smoke weed, it changes my perspective, and I like enjoying that different perspective of life. It's not that I need this. It's just that that's the part of the thriving in life. It's you get to um, experience the variety it has to offer, not to fix anything about it, but just to experience life. Does that make sense? Otherwise, it's boring. So there's no need to be like a prude or purist or whatever if you don't have any kind of, because if you're like, oh, I have to be like pure and everything like that, it's because you're afraid, because you know what's inside of you. You don't want that demon to get loose, so you're controlling that demon, but you never really dealt with it. But if you dealt with it, then you're not going to be afraid of drinking a little alcohol once in a while. That's the problem with alcoholic people, is that the point of it all is to deal with it completely at the root cause, complete, until it is gone. And so then you're not afraid of drinking alcohol. You can have alcohol, but no addiction there. You see what I'm trying to say? The problem is the addiction and the from that distortion that is in your heart, which we all start with. Nobody, as you see, like, another view to take, which is wrong, is to say, like, well, I'm kind of fucked up. No, nobody is right at the start of this game. Everybody starts with their pieces of the puzzle, like, all over the place and fragmented. Everybody. Some may have some pieces of the puzzle already put together, and they have all these rest that need to be put together. That's part of life. And others may have, like, a lot of them put together and just a few left, right? But we're all somewhere on that spectrum of that, what I call, like, a vertical development. Okay. And the more you go further, the more difficult it becomes to to remain defragmented, so to speak. But the game is always remains the same. And in the end, it feels like to me where you kind of, what I call, like, living at the edge of life, where you, any kind of distortion that is arising, you immediately dealing with that. Nothing slips away into your mind as imagination. Nothing slips into your body as a negative action. Everything's dealt with at the source. That's, like, the best place to be for anybody. Learning how to calibrate that thing, right? It's very important, because it's the direction of consciousness. Because most of the things that are out there is actually trying to work with the mind, so you don't have to deal with that. Still a type of, you could call it, it's satanic. That's why this satanic is not just like somebody's doing the rituals, right? It could take a form of somebody is trying to make you create a state of consciousness that is pleasurable, so you can temporarily pacify the suffering that is there. Its direction is still wrong. This is exactly what they do in these rituals. So you can get caught in somebody who is supposed to be a teacher, but is actually just doing a satanic ritual on you. The end is exact same. And so it's like, why do you lump somebody like a Joe Dispenza and somebody who's doing satanic rituals and sacrificing? because this is the end result is that they're creating that type of hedonistic pleasure that is internally through the state of consciousness acquired, so they don't have to look at the source of it. It's the exact same thing that happens. You see, this is why you have the groups of people who are kind of like a Kool-Aid. They're addicted to that fucking thing. They make, of course, these types of people make money, but they just have a bunch of Kool-Aid drinking addicts. Does that make sense? So, and I point to the other direction. I say, don't look for this pleasurable state. Go to the state that is the most uncomfortable and deal with that. And once you deal with that, that enjoyable state is going to be there automatically as a background of your being without you needing to chase it anymore. Okay? So that's what we're dealing with. Okay? I mean, in general, these are the only, like, I found that there might be 56. Some say there's 72, but you see, I don't think there are 72. There are 56. There are the rest. When people say 72, that is basically extra 16, right? Yeah, there's extra 16. That number 16 is not about those distortions, but it is about the structures that holds those distortions. I think that's what's a more accurate way to say it. But anyway, so it's always about that. Okay? And I got to the point in my life realizing that, like, oh, what is the free? Because sometimes, look, like, before in my life, I would let the ego get its way in myself and even in others. Right? For one moment, like, I could have ended up like these teachers, and selling that pacification solution and not really freeing people's consciousness. And yeah, because when you take that role and you say, like, no, this is a solution, you become very egotistic yourself. But something just won't let me stay there. And because I realized that, I don't know, what happened to me is, like, I would let somebody to get away with their, like, ego tantrum, and then I would immediately experience the feedback on the emotional level. So it's like, if I let myself to get away with my ego tantrum, I cause pain to somebody else. If they get away with their ego tantrum, they cause pain within me. And so then I saw that dynamic and say, okay, so there has to be something that is capable of ending that cycle. Okay? But this can be done. Those things, people can go through them. The ego can surrender and let go. You see, it is possible. This is why none of these distortions and whatever stems out of these distortions, right? It's like a tree of knowledge, of good and evil and whatever. It can be a little one, and when it's a little one, you can catch it early, at the early age, boom, it's dealt with. And you can even teach a child of how to deal with this thing when it starts bubbling up. You place your attention there and awareness until it's zeroed out, until there's no difference between attention and awareness. and that is dealt with. Okay. um because if you really want to be like idealist, which, I mean, technically it can happen, which is like the very fact of you steering off once from the, those main principles of life, and seeing that you just went through some sort of tantrum within you, and then later there was a like alleviation because somebody helped you, you realize, oh, that would fuck my life up, my life or somebody else's life. So I don't want this in my life ever again. And what can I do for this never happen again? And then you learn the alchemy at the early age. I mean, if the child is ready for that step. If not, a parent has to do it for them. But there has to be that zeroed out completely into that resolution. And you see, there's all sorts of interesting ways that the ego is trying to get away with nonsense, and it just like, oh my god, you see, like it's such a thing. And that's what like the only problem in the society really is. Like, there's no creation and playfulness until that is dealt with, right? Until the evil is dealt with. Like I said, like I'm describing, anybody who's overly, not even overly, even anybody who's promiscuous, that's a tantrum. Anybody who's on OnlyFans is a tantrum. Anybody who's an escort is a tantrum. Anybody who um is a crook and trying to make money and appear that they're like good men and whatnot is having a tantrum. Anybody who is trying to learn how to be a bad boy to manipulate a woman so they can get the reactions and they can get laid is having a tantrum. You see what I'm trying to say? Somebody is gonna have to get spanked. You know, I want to say somebody, all of these people, and society does not have this paternal process right now. Like, yeah, they may arrest the person who is a crook, and whatnot. But then what? Is somebody's going to be able to deal with that person until it zeroes out that particular distortion? You know? So that happens when the entire society or even that paternal structure is actually doesn't want to end this thing because it's profitable. This is what's wrong with like YouTube right now. This is like everything, so many people watching dysfunction. Why? So just one demon is having a meltdown and another demon is getting entertained by it. It wasn't entertaining, you know, to watch a grown woman having a 4-year old tantrum in this completely ugly way. And yeah, I mean, she does need an exorcism at this point. And another thing you may want to say, which I don't agree with this particular thing. You can say like, well, if a person does not want to let go of their demon or ego tantrum, then you should let them be. I don't agree with that. I completely don't agree with that. Like, what are you talking about? How can a person in unconscious state can agree with this fact and you see them trying like it's like you talking it's nonsense, right? Like if somebody is an addict, they're already programmed to get that thing that they're addicted to. And they're going to do everything it takes to get that and to manipulate you to believe that they don't need it, right? The exact same thing as trusting an addict. It's the exact same thing as saying like, "Oh, but promise me you're not going to take it." Yes, I will. I won't. And of course that they will. What are you talking about? But if you bring that person in a state of clarity, that person would say, "Fuck, that was so fucked up. Thanks for taking me out of this nonsense." One person is speaking from the clarity. Nobody in the right mind would in a, the right mind is the key here, would say that I want this perpetuation of suffering and relief and suffering and relief. Nobody, of course, nobody in their right mind would say that. They may want to feel good, but now they could feel good without need to get that fix to feel good, because the feeling good is already here. Does that make sense? It's like a person's trying to feel good, but rather than dissolving that distortion that makes them feel bad in the first place, they look for the external solution to feel good. Again, I'm repeating myself, but I'm just saying that this is it. Like this is the only principle that you got to take care of in your life, and everything else will fall into place. And that's how you deal with people. If somebody's trying to get away with their tantrums, like I do it with all sorts of social situations all the time. Mostly it's just like on an energetic level, because I can feel the people intent. I block their intent. Another thing I want to say about this spiritual warfare, right? I mean, if you're a man and you make this your priority, everything else will fall in your life. I mean, Jesus said, "Seek the kingdom of God, and everything else will be added on to you." I don't know what that word "seek," but dig perhaps. And the only way you can stay in the kingdom of God is you can keep slaying demons. This is what, like, as a man, you can stay in the kingdom of God if you keep slaying demons. You cannot let a single one pass, because then you pay the price. And if you make that your first priority, is to protect yourself and others around you from these um, distortions and these demonic entities, then that would be the biggest return on your investment. Right. I mean, it does create a little bit of a problem where, um, you know, the problem being is like, so what are you going to do now? Everywhere you go, now you're going to have to do this. I say that you have to do that at least on your path. Anything that is on your path, and that is your path, and you need to overcome it, and you need to exercise a demon to do that, then you do that. Okay? You can sometimes like steer off of it and get caught with other things and try to deal with the things that you don't really need to. You see, this is what I've noticed I've been doing, and I was like, oh, wait a second, I don't have to deal with this, because sometimes you can get caught in a sense like the whole idea of demon slaying, whether it's in your path or not, and that's not really what I'm trying to say here. Um, if it's in your path, then you deal with it. And then when your path is taken care of, then you can take the sidewalks if um, if you see, if you deem necessary. But you're gonna have to understand this thing that um, the person who needs to go through this will not agree with this. That's why it's sort of like exorcism. It's not a therapy. um, and that's the difference. Some people have that feeling and they see manifestation of it and say like, well, I don't want this to come out ever again, and they look for the ways to, so that's the type of person, right? It's kind of ready to let that thing go already for real. And then the people who are not ready to let go for of that, and they're into that too much, too unconscious basically, right? That's the difference between somebody who's just going to come to you for help and you can teach them how to self-calibrate and calibrate for them and whatnot, and somebody who will never come to you, but you're going to have to fuck them up at some point. And the demon in that person is going to be fucked up sooner or later. That's the destiny of all the demons. Okay, so here what I'm saying here, you as an alchemist or as a man who's dealing with those things within yourself first, you have the authority to obstruct the ego tantrum or the will of evil. You do have that authority, but you got to do it from no anger, no hate, nothing. You have to alchemize all of that. You got to do it from that standpoint. And this way, usually, the the demon is attacking you. Okay, and it's perfect. That's exactly what you want. You want to provoke a demon to attack you, and if you remain in that alchemical pillar of light, it's all gonna burn up. Okay, that's what you do. You don't attack. You provoke. It attacks you. It happens on an energetic level. Comes in because it's trying to take you over, but they get trapped because it's not just a regular person. This motherfucker is a demon slayer. And you burn it all up. And in the practical terms, what happens is that this, a lot of times you feel it as like this pain entering your chest, like that's very deep pain. And then you go there and you take that motherfucker by the throat and pull it back into the void. And that is the scariest thing. Is whatever is in that void is the end of the demon. But I have to tell you something about the demon, is that belief, you can call it belief if you don't like the word that demon, is that the secret desire there is exactly that, is self-destruction before it manifests in something physical. You gotta you see what I'm trying to say. This is why if you keep on alchemizing, you will begin to attract these types of attacks. And you keep on alchemizing, keep on alchemizing, keep on alchemizing, keep on alchemizing, attack you, and you keep on alchemizing. You just keep speaking the truth. You get attacked, you keep on alchemizing. And that's why, like, it's like a moth to the flame. You see what I'm trying to say? I know the purpose of my life at least. And if you've been, you're tired to deal in a way that is never really ending, then this is the way. This is the way. And in this particular life, excuse me, in this particular life, which is it is in this particular moment in time in life, if you look around, that's the only thing that is required to do. What are you gonna keep on seeking some vain nonsense? Like you're still trying to say like it's ridiculous. Like I can't freaking see how that is even an intelligent choice. And even if you try to like have so like a quote unquote like a normal life, unless you have your domain kind of clear and sparkling and people in it as well, you won't be able to have, an enjoyable life. That's what needs to be done first. So right now in this particular time, you can have like your own reality bubble, which is kind of clean, but you have to not let anybody come in until they wipe their shoes, so to speak, right? Um, there's one thing that I still sort of like debating and on the fence because um, how far do you go with this? You see, how far do you go with this? What I mean by that is that eventually it's going to happen. What I'm trying to say is this. I think that as you live your life and you never skip any kind of alchemical process that needs to be done, and you always object for the evil to have its way and always object the ego tantrum within you and other people, then it's going to be sufficient work for you to be able to stay in the kingdom of God and alchemize all of that. That's for sure. But sometimes what I do is that I see that in a person, and I don't know if it's right or not, but that's what I'm investigating right now. I see that there is what's living in that person. I see it. I feel it, and I could call it out, trigger that person, go through this alchemical process, this exorcism kind of thing, and free that person. Okay? But I don't always do that. Sometimes what I do, I see that in the person, and rather than sort of like, uh, going through that process immediately, there's part of me that wants that person to get the feedback from life. And maybe that's right. Um, because this is important part. If I do it for them, then they still will remain in that type of immature way. Rather than get them to the point where they wanted to do it by themselves so they could get out of it themselves, that would be better. Okay? Because you would have somebody who is self sustaining and self sufficient. You would have somebody free. But if you act more as a parent, in that moment you can liberate that person from it, but then that person would not go through their own tower moments and their own. You see what I'm trying to say? So this is why sometimes I don't do this with women, especially. I could see what's going on. I could do that, but I don't, because I you see what I'm trying to say. Like, it may sound like a tough love. You could just do it and whatever, but no, I don't want to relate to that particular woman, because I can see there's more potential in that woman. That woman can be sort of uh, has a capacity to, through devotion or and alchemy, to do this by herself, and not to get caught into those, those kind of things. On a subconscious level, they already know that I can do this for them, but I don't want to do it for them. The maximum that I'll do is just meet you halfway, because you're the type of soul that has the capacity to be uh, individuated. And this is why I don't do it for everybody. But if I see that the soul doesn't have that capacity, I may just do it. But I kind of have hope for some people. Say, like, I don't know, maybe it's not right. Maybe I should just do it. But that's where I'm at right now. I think my intuition is right. I think for some people you should do it. For others, you have to let them get their feedback, see where takes them. When they can no longer go there, then they may come back and seek out for, because they subconsciously know who to talk to when the shit hits the fan. And then maybe that be read, like they may be in that readiness that is voluntary, and say like, well, there's a part of side of me that I don't want to have. It seems like it's a distortion. It puts me in a very unconscious way of being. I become destructive, destroy my life and stuff like that. It's just propagate the suffering for myself and other people. Let's get this out of it, and teach me how to doggy. That's at least what I see in my head as an ideal outcome. But for others, like if they clearly don't have that capacity, you can just do it for them. I say, right? And that's how you want to live life. This is why, like, it's not like you asking for a utopia and anything like that. No, you're just actually living life so deeply that you don't let any kind of that bullshit to slip through. And so life is not boring. I mean, demon slaying is not boring. it's it's always something that's going on. But the rewards, you have real peace, real tranquility, real connections. You have something that is real. And see, like, everything that I'm saying is usually the opposite of what these spiritual teachings are saying. Particularly when people say, like, well, um, anything that points out and ignores this process that needs to be uh, gone through is, of course, nonsense. And whatever how you name it, regardless, it is there. And if you don't go through this process, and if you don't alchemize, if you don't calibrate your consciousness, nothing else in your life is going to be all right. It's just the way it is. And there's just like, if you accept this, everything else will falls into place. And the more you do this, the better you at it, the more you start seeing this. It really is. I don't know how to even name it. It's not visible, right? It may get visible sometimes if you trigger somebody. But anyway, even like right now, I'm even working on like silent exorcism. I think it's possible to do it without uh, triggering people, like physically, because you can trigger them astrally. In astral, you can obstruct their will, because in astral, everybody's intents are available there, and you can connect to a person in the astral, see their intent, you know, reject that bitch, and so you oppose their intent in the astral. That evokes that, you know, tantrum on your energy level, and you alchemize that. Okay, so you can do this work without even seeing a person. Um, and they may even like attack you, right? And so when they actually attack you, you're just like, okay, motherfucker, you just done did it. You gone fucked up. You just gone fucked up, brother. So that's what I have to say about the free will. The ego never respect the free will of the ego. It's not free will, I should say. The will of ego never respect the will of ego, because it's a broken will. You understand? And it's important. The person may say may want to get something, right? And then that person may totally deserve to have that. But if they approach the ego tantrum, no, you ain't fucking getting it this way. Don't try to get anything in your life through ego, because that's evil. You will get it. You don't need to have a tantrum. You will have it, but you will have it the right way. Everything in life like that. Even the politicians, that the way they approach it, they may get everything that they ever want. Everyone. But just learn to respect the principles of this game. And don't make the mistake more than once. Crash and burn once, sure. If you make a mistake once on each particular distortion, you deal with each particular one, that's ideal. So you don't object at the beginning, you'll have one cycle, then you object. Okay, bye.